A lot of St. George's music got burnt, but this is Opus 5, number 2, and it's one of his violin concertos. And now we have to remember, he was only equaled by Paganini, who came 50 years later. So this is a guy that's really innovating music, and so when you hear him, a lot of times they say he sounds like kind of a complex Mozart. Work on the music of St. George, you're not going to be in for a walk in the park. You're going to sweat.
Okay, all right. I have to tell our listeners, they can't see it, but this picture, he was drop dead gorgeous.
He's
the
pretty.
women must have been falling over themselves for this guy.
Yep, and you walk into the room and you see fans going and people whispering. It was like that,
I believe it.
and that was a way that, he sort of like, it's like they verified that he wasn't really ugly. You know what I mean? I think sometimes people wrote so because of his...
No.
Yeah, so he was like tall, dark, and he was pretty, like Ali said.
Yeah.
He was a pretty good. He's
very pretty.
Yeah, and he was equally talented.
Now, Roy, I want to ask you about this Black Mozart, but first I'm just going to read something from this book I picked up here. It says, long before the word superstar was coined, St. George was the original. Many people throughout history have been famous for one reason or another. Many have made great contributions to civilization and left great legacies. Their paintings and sculptures we still admire. Their discoveries have made our lives better. The music we still play and sing. But no one in history was as talented in so many areas as St. George. For a time, he was the greatest fencer in the world. He was an exceptional violinist, and along with his teacher, Gossec, he pioneered the composition of the string quartet. Even Mozart came to Paris to study this new form of music. St. George was an unequaled equestrian, an exceptional marksman, and an elegant dancer. The wealthy copied the way he dressed, and the common people admired him as he walked through the streets and whispered his name. He was a true Renaissance man, a superstar in the Paris of King Louis XIV and Marie Antoinette. What is even more remarkable was the fact that he was mulatto. Now, my question for you, Roy, is this superstar guy, how come we have heard so little about him? How come we don't know about him?
Well, I think it's a very interesting thing. He was a child of many revolutions. He was actually, they called him the American. So his mother was, he was born in Guadalupe. His mother was there from the slave trade. At a very young age, his father left and took his mother, who was his mistress, and the wife and the child, who he loved so much, to France, and that's where he just brought him through society. Now, the reason why we haven't heard of him, because he's a child of the Revolution. We got the French Revolution. And so there's revolution going on. And in that revolution, what we a lot of times don't see in the classical movies of Mozart and them is that he was in this world. This classical music existed at the same time at the height of the slave trade. So the overturning of the revolution and the coming of enlightenment also was about the abolitionist movement. But he's curious because he had arrived and fought and played his way up to society. So he's very high society. So when the revolution came, he still fought for the revolution because they were fighting for equality and human rights, much like the civil rights movement, right? Now he disappears because in the French Revolution, they start dropping that guillotine on anyone who had anything to do with high society. You were getting ready to have a date with Madame Guillotine. So they put him in jail. He was just about, but they said, well, wait a minute, we cannot kill this man. He fought for the revolution. He hasn't done anything, But during that time, it wasn't cool, that high society stuff. So they burn a lot of his music. And so he's kind of gotten lost to history. You read from a book earlier, and I want to read from another book by Smidak, Smidak. And his whole book is dedicated to Nanon, but in this one chapter he talks about the St. George miracle, and he says, before dealing with this new phase of St. George's life, let us pause for a moment to ponder what we have narrated so far. The time is the height of the era of slavery. Africa's living ebony is sold by weight, and the black man suffers the worst degradation in history. The law denies him the expression of his humanity and reduces him to the level of an animal. And yet, against this background, we find a black man in charge of the greatest orchestra in France, St. George, right? He introduces Haydn's symphonies to the French audiences, presents to them some of the best virtuosi in Europe by his own compositions, contributes to creating two new genres in European music. That's like Miles Davis. He's creating new music, you know?
Right, new genres, not just new music.
Right, and the forms were the string quartet and the concertante symphony, and has his works played before an illustrious audience. More amazing still, this black man was to be admitted to the court of Versailles to make music with Queen Marie Antoinette herself. This whole project, when you see the picture of St. George and the way he's dressing and stuff, it looks like I've been working on this project for 10 years. He's got my hat on. He's got that, I'm saying mine, but you know.
The three-cornered hat that you're famous for.
Yeah, but he's got that whole style. When I saw him, I was like, I need to hear about this brother. He's dressing like me. What's up with this, you know? So in the spirit of the circle, it looks like when he's putting these pictures together, you see this outreach. You know, I've had the honor to work with people from the Nashville Ballet, choreographer Sanjay Mayo, you know, these beautiful ballet dancers, players from the Nashville Symphony. I mean, the village dancers, all of these people. The backdrop of St. George is the American. This is an American that was over there in Europe expressing himself and expressing something that reverberates, I think, to America today. The title of this symphony that I'm working on is called the Black Mozart, but the underneath title is called the American, because he was known as the American. Unlike any composer in Europe, this is a guy coming from the Americas, transplanted over there right in the middle of it, innovating, fulfilling what classical music is evolving into, innovating art forms like Miles Davis. And Dvorak, many years later, would say that he felt that many of the folk songs and the spirituals from America was the future of classical music. People would always say, even during that time, he sounds like Mozart.
And then a lot of times the people will remind him that it was Mozart that came to France and borrowed from St. George. So this is
Not
very
the other way
fascinating.
around.
Yeah, it wasn't the other way around. Yeah, so it's a very fascinating time. I've been working with a lot of the young players here. I've also gotten a chance to work with some of the symphony players, and it's been a great collaboration, learning, what they see in the music and what they hear in the music. So that's been a great learning experience. And as far as the Circle of Harmony, also, I've been working with different rappers. And see, I like this because St. George was a great dancer, fencer, actor, musician, sword fighter. I want to see that aspect of dance in this thing. And so the young people are grabbing this and putting their vision into it. And a lot of times with young people and the elders hold a secret like that. If you really pay attention, history is like that. If you really pay attention, it'll teach you something that's right in front of you, but you didn't really know. It's like, wow. So that's the beauty of this. I'm learning along the way. I'm having a great time doing it. So.
I can tell.
Yeah.
Also listen to this on my website that I have for this radio show, which is TennesseeProgressReport.org, and we will be posting this show up on the archives. If you missed part of it, please go and listen to it.